So I'm sure a lot of you love some Microsoft games, man. We got games such as Avowed, Fable. We got a lot of portfolio when it comes to the Xbox brand and what Microsoft is doing in the future. And it looks like because of Jez Corden, we might have some more information on the future games. Let's talk about it. But before we get on the video, definitely hit that like button if you guys enjoy the video. You can always subscribe to the channel for weekly content. And don't forget to go there and follow me at Twitter at LordAddictILP. Without any further ado, let's talk about these new games at Microsoft. What's going on, you guys? Gaming out here, coming at you for another video. Today we're going to be talking about some of the newer stuff that's going on with Microsoft, some of the newer titles. Those of you that's been following me for a while, you know that I'm a huge fan in terms of a lot of the Xbox studios that Microsoft has bought over the years, and a lot of the games that they're making. Let's be real here. I feel like a lot of Microsoft studios that they bought a few years ago, and especially Bethesda that they bought last year, is showing fruits already. And one of the biggest questions that I feel like a lot of Xbox fans has, let's be real here, guys, is what are the older studios going to do? The Compulsion games, the Undead Labs. Sure, we got a lot of information in terms of what a lot of them were doing, but I do feel like there were some that we didn't get that information from. For instance, Compulsion Games. We do know that Josh Sawyer was making a game over there at Obsidian. He had his own team. It was said it was a smaller team, but we didn't know that there was a team being made on that end. But one thing we didn't have was we didn't have the information on what they're making. But because of Jez Corden, it looks like that might have changed. So the first thing let's talk about Compulsion Games. You guys know the people that make We Happy Few. I've always personally felt like this studio has a lot of potential, and I've been very excited to see the potential of this studio come out. And it looks like we're actually going to see something relatively, I don't know if it's going to be soon. He did bring it up in here, it's going to be a little bit of time, but we do know some form of information on it. And I wouldn't really go as far as say like a lot of this is new. Maybe the Project Midnight that's going on here is more new than anything else. But I do think in some way, shape, or form, we've heard a lot of these statements that I'm about to read in a second on different outlets. I know, you know, for those of you that's been following me, you know I'm on Iron Lords podcast. We did have the community manager on the show, and she did, you know, she told us it was a third-person action adventure. I don't know if she said action adventure, but she did say third-person perspective. So, you know, I don't think that's relatively new. But let's go ahead and read exactly what Jez Corden says about Compulsion's Project Midnight. Compulsion joined Microsoft near the start of their content acquisition spree. The film is primarily known for We Happy Few, and despite some gameplay problems, delivered big in the art direction department. We Happy Few twisted versions of a Fallen Britain proved a truly integrating concept and solidified Compulsion as a studio with a lot of potential. Now, for those of you that's been following me, you know that I'm not a huge fan of what We Happy Few was. I'm more of a fan of what it could have happened, the narrative behind that. I mean, I love the foundation that We Happy Few was built on. I just felt like it could have been a little bit better. So recently we received some details on Compulsion's first outing as part of the Xbox Game Studios, currently codenamed Midnight. This upcoming title is supposed a third-person action adventure set in the dark, fantastic world. Some of the game's early concept art can be seen above. They represent the game's protagonist along with a warped, hairy-like humanoid that appears to descend in the mutation. On the left, we see that it appears to be a harpy nest style dwelling built atop a tree. So I'm going to put up the actual thing, you know, probably around right here, of the actual artwork that's in this. It looks pretty gnarly. Like I really like this. Does seem like something Compulsion artwork wise would make, and I'm really anticipating exactly what the studio does. I've always felt like Compulsion slept on because of We Happy Few, and I think We Happy Few had a lot of variables that made We Happy Few the game it was. But if you guys play the expansions of We Happy Few, it's a different game. It's more narrative focused, and I really expect that coming from Compulsion in their future games, where they're going to narrative focused storyline. You guys know when it comes to this studio, I have a lot of hope for this studio. I think this studio can really deliver if people actually give them a chance, and I think we're going to see that in the future, hopefully near future. But you know, he does bring up in here that let's go ahead and read that part. Let me scroll up a little bit. I apologize, guys. So he said recently received Midnight is described as a coming-of-age tale drawing upon inspirations from America's Deep South. The game features magic and large fantastical beasts with a strong southern gothic vibe. The game is strongly single-player experience, which has been described to me as a strong story. Like I mentioned earlier, I believe that this studio is going to be very focused on story from here going out. I think we're going to see a lot of very unique stories coming out of this studio. I've always felt like Compulsion, if nurtured right and have grown naturally in the studio, that they could actually be their own BioWare. They can make stories that rival that type of storytelling. And I think that they can easily do that as long as Microsoft allows them to grow in the way that they need to grow. Right now, I have no information on the launch timing of Midnight. You'll likely looking at next couple years for an official reveal, perhaps even a full launch, although it could come later depending on Compulsion's growth and ambitions for the title. Like I said earlier, depends on how Microsoft is going to grow the studio over the next few years. I feel like Microsoft's really going to show up for Compulsion, and I think we're going to see a great game from them. So next game that we got to talk about is we got to talk about Obsidian. I know a lot of you really like Obsidian. Me, for one, I am a huge fan of Obsidian. I love the Outer Worlds. I love Fallout New Vegas. I love South Park Stick of Truth. You know, one of the Knights of the Republic, I'm pretty sure it was the second one they made. This studio is definitely the GOAT to me in terms of Microsoft studios. I feel like they have a lot of promise. And it looks like we're going to see something else from them. We've known that Josh Sawyers is going to be making a game for a long time. People like Jeff Grubbs mentioned it. You know, we've had Jez Cord mention it a couple times. But I'm not going to really read too much into exactly what's said. I will put it in the description below so you can go check his actual writing for this and you can get his words for it. But let's go ahead and mention a couple things. So I'm being told that it's being built by a small team of around 12 people, and it's more of a narrative RPG adventure than something combat orientated. I don't really like that, but we're going to keep going with that. The art assets above may represent some of the designs that the game is gunning for Jeff Grubb. Also mentioned that it is exploring experimental gameplay elements too, although they may ultimately not make it into the final release. Speaking of which, Grubb also noted that it is indeed gunning for a 2022 launch. Okay, first off, let's talk about the amount of people. So this game, it's called Pelament. I'm probably butchering that. You guys know I can't pronounce stuff. We're going to move on with that. But it's got about 12 people. So think of it morely like a grounded, smaller project. Don't expect like huge production here. But we got to keep in mind that the person that's doing this, the person that is overseeing this, he's Josh Sawyers, man. He's a very competent person. So expect good game, but not high production, if that makes sense to you guys. Like, I do feel like this game is going to look nice. You know, everything's going to be good, but don't expect a huge game. You know, and maybe, you know, I misspoke on saying high production. It could be a high production, just not a big game. So I do expect this game to be, you know, around grounded level. It's going to be very non-combat focused. So that disco layering game, I would probably expect something more similar to that. But I think that's actually a good thing. You know, let them experiment. Let them find out more ways of making games. I've always felt like in the terms of what goes on in the industry, there's not enough risk taking. And I feel like Game Pass might give Microsoft and their developers more room to actually take risks. And we can have more stuff like the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, Nemesis system. I've always felt like that was one of the few things that I've seen evolve throughout the years, and we haven't really seen anything like that to a degree you these multi-million and multi-billion dollar corporations that make these games are too afraid to take risks. And in order to you know, really grasp something and evolve it, get a genre different, you have to take risks, because everything that's not the norm is a risk. And I've always felt like there's not enough of that going on. So I like that they're giving Josh Sawyers another team. They're letting him work with a small team to find out exactly what he wants to do, because he says he's going to be experimenting in this. So it's really nice. I actually feel like Microsoft has a huge advantage in this because they have all these studios and because they have something like Game Pass where they can take these risks, that I think we're going to see a lot of good fruit from Microsoft in the future in terms of their studios. We got a lot of games in terms of the IO Interactive game. So they have a lot coming out that we don't even know about. And I'm sure some of these studios, such as Fable and stuff, we're expecting a certain type of quality game from them, and I expect them to deliver. So, you know, tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. When it comes to these particular two games that we don't know a whole lot of information about, how do you guys feel? Josh Sawyer's game and Compulsion's game. Do you expect like huge quality, or do you expect like a really nice game but not a big game? I'm kind of curious you guys to hear in the your opinion in the description below, man. But until next time, this is Gaming Addict. I'm out of here. Peace.